Under the glow of the Meridian Ballroom's crystal chandeliers, Atlanta's elite turned as Nyla Hart lifted her glass, radiant in emerald silk, moments after sealing a $980 million deal. Roman Cross stood a few steps behind her, present, yet treated as though he didn't belong in the same air. When he tried to approach, Nyla didn't lower her voice. "Roman, stay back. Don't ruin this for me," she snapped, the words sharp enough for the nearest guests to hear. Drew Langston, the CEO she admired a little too openly, smirked over his champagne. Then Nyla did it. She tipped her glass, letting red wine spill down Roman's white shirt as cameras clicked. "Know your place," she whispered, smiling for the crowd. But Drew's expression shifted the moment Roman met his eyes. Confusion, then fear, because he recognized a man he was never meant to embarrass. Nyla thought she'd humiliated her husband. In reality, she'd triggered the downfall of everything she'd just celebrated. What follows next is the moment everything turns. Like and subscribe to Canada's Heartfelt Tales to continue the story. The ballroom lights dimmed just enough for Roman to see the smear of wine still drying across his shirt as he stepped out onto the balcony moments after the incident. Laughter and whispers bled through the glass doors behind him, each one a reminder of how quickly a room full of elites could turn into an audience hungry for humiliation. He gripped the railing, feeling the night breeze brush against the sting of embarrassment. Inside, Nyla basked beneath the chandelier glow, smiling as if she had just stamped out an inconvenience instead of a husband. Drew Langston hovered proudly beside her, raising a glass with the kind of ease reserved for men who believed the world bent in their favor. Roman watched them from afar, his breath steady but weighted. He hadn't planned revenge. But humiliation has a way of waking something inside a man, something old, disciplined, and patient. A soft voice broke the silence. "Roman, are you all right?" It was Elena Moore, one of Meridian's senior analysts, stepping cautiously onto the balcony. She had witnessed what happened, her expression filled with both anger and pity. "You didn't deserve that," she said quietly. "None of it." Roman managed a faint smile. "It's fine. People show who they are eventually." Elena hesitated before adding, "Just be careful. Drew's been reckless lately. And your wife seems tangled up in whatever he's plotting." Roman didn't flinch. He already knew more than she imagined. "Thank you," he said before walking away from the bright hall and toward the building's exit, toward the quiet where decisions were made. The moment he reached the parking garage, the weight of 3 years settled over him like dust after a collapsed structure. He sat inside his BMW, the interior silent except for the faint hum of the engine. The wine on his clothes had dried into a dark, accusing reminder. Yet beneath the humiliation burned something calm, an architect's clarity. His phone buzzed. A message from David Morrison. "Everything is ready when you are." Roman stared at the screen, not with bitterness but with resolve. Nyla had spent years believing she had traded up in life, believing his quiet demeanor meant insignificance. But she had built her entire career atop foundations he had laid for her in silence. She had forgotten that foundations, when shaken, could take the entire structure down with them. By the time he arrived at his penthouse, dawn was still hours away. The city rested, unaware of how drastically the next day would shift. Roman walked through the dark apartment, every step echoing the life he'd allowed to shrink around Nyla's ambition. Awards lined the shelves, but none of them had been enough for her. Not prestige, not love, not loyalty. He unlocked his study, revealing the documents that controlled a corner of Atlanta's economic skeleton. The Cross Family Trust, his grandfather's legacy, sprawled across his desk in neat stacks. Land deeds, equity stakes, investment agreements, and most importantly, the controlling interest in Meridian Corporation, the corporation Nyla had just toasted, unaware the real owner never stood at the podium. Roman sat, pulled the Meridian contract toward him, and reread the morality clause. Public misconduct, disrespect toward business partners or their families, grounds for termination and asset forfeiture. Nyla's wine glass had done far more damage than staining his suit. It had activated the single clause she never knew existed, the clause she had unknowingly stepped into like a trap she built herself. Morning crept into the sky as Roman prepared the final documents with David. The study buzzed with activity. Legal assistants moved like shadows across the room. Roman remained composed, flipping pages, initialing forms, giving instructions with a measured confidence he had rarely shown to the woman who believed she towered over him. At 7:46 a.m., Nyla's footsteps thundered up the stairs. "Roman, we need to talk," she called, her voice frayed with panic. When she stepped into the study and saw the documents, her breath hitched. What is all this?" Roman didn't raise his voice. "This is the part of our life you were never interested in." She lifted a paper with trembling hands. "You're handling Meridian's contracts. Why do you even have these?" He met her eyes. "Because I own Meridian, Nyla." Color drained from her face as the truth settled in, a truth she had never once considered while belittling him in public. You own the company." "Majority shareholder," he corrected calmly. "Which means last night wasn't just a marital embarrassment. It was a corporate one." She dropped the contract as though it had burned her palms. "Roman, listen. I was drunk, I wasn't thinking straight. You were thinking clearly enough to humiliate me in front of the people my family's legacy employs. Please," she whispered. "Don't do anything yet. I can fix this." Roman almost pitied her. "Almost. You had 3 years to fix the way you treated me. One night didn't break this. You did." She sank into a chair, defeated. But defeat became terror when David spoke. "The board has been notified. The contract is under suspension pending your removal from the project." No, Roman, they can't do that," she said, voice cracking. He didn't answer. Some truths didn't need words. By noon, Roman entered the Meridian boardroom, the city sprawling behind him. Drew Langston sat stiffly at the head of the table, his arrogance from last night replaced with dread. "Roman," Drew said, forcing a smile. "We can discuss whatever concerns you have." Roman handed him a folder. "This isn't a discussion." Inside were photographs, emails, expense reports, months of evidence tying Drew to an affair, misuse of company funds, and conduct that violated the very agreement that fed his success. Drew's hands trembled as he flipped through the pages. "You set me up," he whispered. Roman leaned in slightly. "You set yourself up." The boardroom fell into tense silence before the chairman finally spoke. "Mr. Langston, your violations are grounds for immediate termination. Effective now." Security stepped forward. Drew's voice cracked into something desperate. "Roman, please, don't let them do this. I can fix everything." But his pleas dissolved into the air as he was escorted out of the building he once commanded. The next hours unfolded like dominoes tipping in perfect sequence. Nyla lost her position. Her accounts were frozen. Her reputation, once polished, ambitious, enviable, crumbled in real time across social media and corporate networks. Calls stopped. Invitations vanished. Opportunities evaporated. Roman watched it all with a quiet heaviness. He didn't delight in her suffering, but justice had a gravity that demanded balance. Nyla had built her empire on disrespect, and disrespect finally collected its debt. That evening, when she arrived at his office one last time, she looked smaller than he had ever seen her. "I lost everything," she said weakly. Roman nodded. "So did I. A long time ago. Last night just revealed it." She stared at him with pleading eyes. "What am I supposed to do now?" Roman paused. "Start over. The way I had to start over the moment you stopped seeing me as your equal." Her final apology dissolved the moment the elevator doors closed. 6 months later, Roman walked through the vibrant floors of his new firm, Cross Design Group, where employees greeted him not as a ghost in the background but as the visionary behind the company's rise. Quinn Silverton waited by the model room with updated plans for their museum project. "You ready to change the city again?" she asked. Roman smiled. "Every day." Through the window, he noticed a familiar figure across the street, Nyla, in modest office clothes, organizing forms at a small reception desk. No malice. No grandeur. Just a woman rebuilding her life brick by brick. Actions have consequences. And some consequences rebuild the right person in the end. But the man who once stood humiliated beneath a chandelier. He now stood exactly where he belonged. At the top of the structure he rebuilt with dignity. And as Quinn handed him their next project file, a new chapter quietly opened. One where respect wasn't demanded. It was mutual. Where love wasn't conditional. It was honest. And where anyone who dared disrespect the wrong man learned the cost of mistaking silence for weakness. But Roman's story isn't done yet. Because the man he exposed, the one who believed he could exploit power without consequence, hasn't faced the final reckoning. And what comes next will reveal just how far justice can reach. As the months passed, Roman found himself settling into a rhythm he hadn't felt in years, a rhythm built not on silence or compromise, but on clarity. The city he'd once viewed from a distance now opened itself to him in new ways. Projects flourished, partnerships strengthened, and the people around him recognized the steadiness he had carried long before anyone else noticed. One evening, while reviewing sketches for a community art center, he paused at the window. Across the street, a group of children raced past a mural he had helped fund, laughing, free, untouched by the weight of ambition or betrayal. For the first time in a long time, the sight brought him peace. He wasn't angry anymore. The past had taken what it needed. The future was finally offering something back. Strength didn't come from winning a battle. It came from choosing what deserved space in his life. And truth, once spoken aloud, had a way of clearing everything that didn't belong. Roman turned off the studio lights and stepped outside, the evening air warm against his skin. Behind him the skyline glowed, towering, imperfect and alive, much like the man he'd grown into. If this journey moved you, take a moment to like, share, and help Canada's Heartfelt Tales grow by subscribing. More stories of resilience and renewal await, and we'd love to have you with us.